Let's talk. What is normal and what is different? In 1945, two sculptures meant to represent the average men and women in the United States went an exhibit at the American Museum of Natural History. Based on measurements taken from tens of thousands of young men and women, they are called normal and Norman. That same year, a contest launches to find a living embodiments of normal. Normal is often used as a synonym for typical, expected, or even correct. By the logic, most people choose fit the description of normal, and yet, not one of the almost 4,000 women who participate in the contest matches normal, the supposedly normal women. This puzzle isn't unique to normal and normal either. Time and time again, so-called normal description of our body, minds, and perceptions have turned out to match almost no one. And yet, a lot of worth is constructed around the foundation of normalcy. So what does normal actually mean? And should we be relying on it so much? In statistics, a normal description describes a set of values that fall along a curve. The average or mean of all the value is at the very center, and most other values fall with the hum of the bell. These curves can be tall, with more values inside the narrow range, or along the flat, with only a slight bias towards the average. What makes the distribution normal is that it follows this curved shape. Normal doesn't describe a single data point, but a pattern of diversity. Many human traits, like height, follow normal distribution. Some people are very tall or very short, but most people fall close to the over average. Outside of statistics, normal often refers to an average, like the single number pulls from the fattest part of the bell curve and eliminates all the nuance of the normal distribution. Normal and normal's proportion came from such averages. Applied to individuals, whether someone is considered normal usually depends on how closely they adhere to this average. At best, such definition of normal fails to capture variation, but oftentimes our calculations of normal are even more flawed. Take the BMI, or body mass index. BMI is a measure of weight relative to height, with different ratios falling into underweight, normal weight, overweight, and obese ranges. Generally, only BMIs that correspond to normal weights are considered healthy. But BMI is not always an accurate predictor of health or even what is a healthy weight. BMI doesn't take into account body fat percentage, body fat distribution, levels of physical activity, or blood pressure. And yet, those who fall outside the so-called normal range are commonly advised that losing or gaining weight will improve their health. When we apply a standard of normal to all of humanity that's based on data from a non-representative slice, we're not just choosing one point on the distribution, we're choosing it from the wrong distribution. A lot of behavioral science research draws from samples that are pretty weird, meaning Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. These features can skip norms even in research that doesn't have an obvious link to them. Take the thin, merely line of the correlation. It's normal to think one of the two lines is longer when they're actually the same length. at least if you're American undergraduate. A team of anthropologists and psychologists found other demographic groups were much less susceptible. Members of some people of the Kalahari were susceptible to the illusion at all. When these limits on inaccurate definition of normal are used to make decisions that impact people's lives, they can do real harm. Historically, such a concept of normal has been hugely influential. The eugenic movements of the early 20th century weaponized the concept of normal, using it to justify exclusion, violence, and even extermination of those deemed not normal. To this day, people are often targeted and discriminated against on the basis of disabilities, mental health issues, sexual orientations, gender identities, and other features deemed not normal. But reality is that the differences our bodies, minds, perceptions, and ideas about the world around us ensure diversity is true normal.